You think you know Snow White? A jealous queen, a magical mirror, 7 lovable dwarfs, an apple, and a prince's kiss. But the tale the Brothers Grimm put in your head in 1812 is a polished shell. Underneath sits a roster of real people, real minds, real mirrors, and deliberate murder. If you listen closely, the fairy tale exposes not childish whimsy, but the brutal mechanics of early modern Europe. Jealousy, child labor, poisoning networks, and legal systems that sanctioned cruelty. Picture Kassel in 1812. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm publish Kinder- und Hausmärchen and print Schneewittchen. They list informants and family names. The tale is catalogued as KHM 53. But in their notes, they're not inventing from thin air. They stitch together several older stories and local memories. 2 names keep resurfacing when historians trace those threads back. Margarita von Waldeck, born 1533, dead 1546, and Maria Sophia von Erthal, born 1729, living in Lohr am Main. These are not fictional echoes. They are records, and when you open them, the children's picture book brightens into something very dark. First, the mirror. Children imagine a flattering, talking object, but a mirror in Lohr am Main is no bath toy. Picture Lohr Castle in the 1750s. Damp stone corridors, the tang of coal smoke, a polished glass set in a carved oak frame. The Spessart Museum in Lohr preserves a mid-18th century mirror that local historians point to as the very object that fed a rumor of a most beautiful young woman and her resentful stepmother. Municipal inventories from Lohr in the 1770s list the mirror and the household of the von Erthal family. Maria Sophia von Erthal, daughter of a local elector's official, is recorded in church registers from 1729 onward. Children see a magic mirror. Historians see a household object that reflected rank, reputation, and the way a woman's worth was literally measured in the eye of politics. The mirror's existence, catalogued, dated, and conserved, links a mundane piece of furniture to the social anxiety of 18th century German nobility. But it gets darker when you examine the 7 dwarfs. You picture cheery, bearded miners. Now picture the Harz Mountains and the Erzgebirge in the 16th century. Narrow mine shafts, lantern smoke, and the damp metallic smell of ore. Mining records from Saxony and the Harz from the 1500s routinely note child labor. Boys and girls as young as 7 crawled into tunnels to haul ore because small size was an asset in cramped galleries. Margarita von Waldeck is recorded in family correspondence. She is the daughter of Philip IV, Count of Waldeck, 1504 to 1574, and spends part of her life in the small mining towns of Waldeck. Local chronicles repeatedly mention that nearby mines employed small children, and that stunted growth from malnutrition and rickets was common. When oral memory transformed little miners into dwarfs, it was not fantasy, so much as a translation of brutal reality into story. The 7 are not whimsical companions. They are an index of exploitation, a social snapshot of children made small by labor and poverty. The apple, red, round, fatal, carries another, older violence. Poisoning in early modern Europe is not a fairy tale device. It is a documented method of domestic assassination. The most chilling comparison comes from Italy. Giulia Tofana, executed in Rome in 1659, ran a poison network selling aqua tofana to women seeking to kill abusive husbands, lovers, or rivals. The trial records from the Roman Congregation of the Holy Office, 1659, show inventories of bottles, testimonies about secret deliveries, and a map of how ingested toxins circulated in households. In German courts, Arsenic appears again and again in the 17th and 18th centuries as the weapon of choice for domestic murder. When the Grimms describe a poisoned apple, they are drawing on a long tradition in which a discreet poisoned bite solves inheritance disputes, removes inconvenient spouses, or erases rivals for power. The apple is not a random fruit. It is a coded reference to a method that has paperwork, witnesses, and executions attached. Here's what's truly horrifying. These motifs are not isolated anecdotes. Look at the legal and social backdrop. The witch trials of Würzburg between 1626 and 1631 leave a paper trail of denunciations, torture records, and mass executions. Court protocols that show how reputation and accusation could be weaponized with official sanction. Municipal ledgers and trial transcripts in Bavaria and Franconia record accusations of envy, of maleficia, and of women accused because they were beautiful, wealthy, or simply inconvenient. The evil stepmother trope functions within a legal culture where women's lives were precarious and where the law often assumed female culpability. Court records from Würzburg and Bamberg are gruesome. Names, dates, and the flames that ended lives. When you read those pages, you understand that a fairy tale's moral panic mirrors historical mechanisms of control. There is a second reconstructed scene you must imagine: the Brussels court and a poisoned courtship in the 1540s. Margaretha von Waldeck travels, as many noble daughters did, to join a household at a distant court. Picture a 1540s banquet: wax candles guttering, silver plates tarnished with gravy, the sour tang of heavy wine. Threaded through letters in the Waldeck family archive is a fear that Margarita's beauty attracts dangerous attention. She dies young in 1546. Contemporary correspondence mentions sudden illness. Some accounts, admittedly fragmentary, allege that a woman in her household, jealous and politically threatened, had motive. There is no single smoking gun record that proves murder. But when you line such deaths up with repeated cases of domestic poisoning across Europe, the fairy tale scenario stops feeling like a parable and starts feeling like a pattern. Escalation comes next. The cleaning up of these stories. The Grimm brothers, living in early 19th century Germany, gather fragmented local lore and sanitize it into family morality. They cut details, swapped legal horror for happy endings, and turned systemic violence into personal villainy. But the documents remain. Church registers and lore note baptisms and family ties. Municipal inventories list mirrors and furniture. Mining accounts from Saxony list child laborers, their ages, and wages. The Roman tribunals of 1659 record how poison is bought, sold, and prosecuted. The witch trial registries of the 1620s and 1630s catalog human sacrifice, cloaked in legalism. Each archive entry is a pinprick through the glossy tale. So when you hear the bright, familiar lines again, mirror, mirror on the wall, you should also hear the scrape of a ledger quill, the scrape of a miner's shoe in a low tunnel, and the quiet clink of a vial slid into the sugar pot. Children are taught to pity the stepmother. Historians read name lists and trial logs, and know the stepmother was often a role in a larger competition for dowry, land, and survival. The prince's kiss. That's the final tidy gesture in a story that originally served to obscure networks of cruelty with romance. This is not a conspiracy of fiction, but a slow, systematic pattern across 4 centuries. Noble households policing female beauty and inheritance. Minors and children exploited and remembered as dwarfs. Poisoning as a domestic technology documented in trial records. And legal systems eager to write women into categories of sin. Once you match archival dates, Margaretha von Waldeck, 1533-1546, Julia Tofana's execution, 1659, the Würzburg trials, 1626-1631, Maria Sophia von Erthal in Lohr, born 1729, the sanitized pantomime fractures. The Grimm's tale hides methodical violence behind sugar and rhyme. You will never look at that apple the same way. The mirror in a museum, the ledger in an archive, the mine shaft and the trial transcript all demand a different memory. Snow White is not merely a bedtime story. It is a repository for centuries of female vulnerability turned into narrative currency. The fairy tale polished a bitter truth that beauty, youth, and female bodies were battlegrounds where law, labor, and lethal ingenuity met. That truth lives in ink and glass and the dark places of the earth. The story only teaches us to giggle while it points the way.